gas,
You mean a hot air
natural gas.
furnace? A hot air furnace?
Radiators.
Yeah, you've got a boiler. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, right. A boiler and a furnace, or whatever.
No,
Anyway.
you've got a boiler.
And I am really looking into switching.
Okay,
So I don't know how it's done and what it's going to cost me, but
yeah, okay.
I've got a boiler, and I also have supplement heat, and I'm just looking to figure out where I should go, what
Right.
my next step should be. I have a few rooms that are very cold,
Right.
and I don't know if there's any fix for that, or if that's something that's, I'm just going to have to.
Oh, there's definitely a fix for that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Hi. I
Actually,
just,
say your names too. What's your name?
I'm sorry, Tinka Lunt.
Tinka.
Judy.
Judy.
Jane Oaks. I
Okay.
live in Gill. And I
That's where I used
have
to live.
just, I remember you from a presentation for the school district, because I'm on the committee. I have just arranged to have a heat pump water heater installed.
Okay.
And I'm curious about heat pumps because I have forced hot air and I already have ductwork. So I'm hopeful.
You should be.
Yeah.
That's a real easy conversion.
And Diane, I heat with natural gas, and I don't.
Boiler
know
or
anything about-
furnace?
Pardon?
Boiler or furnace?
It's a,
Water or air?
I don't even know.
Does air blow out of ducts or does
No.
have
Must
radiators?
be a boiler, yeah.
Okay.
I've got radiate,
Yeah,
baseboard.
baseboard.
radiators.
Okay.
So,
Boiler.
so you can see, I know nothing about this.
Right. Well, in New England, there's a confusion. People call boilers furnaces in New
Yes.
England,
Oh.
and it's not in the trade. It's not the right name. It's okay that you call it that. It's just for what I'm doing, I have to know whether you have a hot air system or a water system.
You know,
Okay.
both my sons in their homes have heat pumps, and so I'm
Great.
curious.
Okay.
I have
What's your name?
hot water. Joanne.
Joy.
I have hot water, heat,
Okay.
hot water, whatever. My hot water heater runs off of the oil furnace all summer, all winter.
Oil burn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Well, boiler. Yeah.
and I've had an energy audit done, so I'm ready for the next steps.
Right. Very good.
Bart, Sandy, you probably know as much about our house as I do. So
That's true. I do.
I'm just always trying to learn more.
Yeah. I used to be their neighbor. Yeah. So.
Bart, I read yesterday about a heat pump clothes dryer. Do you know about that?
I do.
Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
How about in the question and answer
All
period?
right.
Okay, we better I think it's about time to be started. So what is it all? What's all this stuff about heat pumps anyway? What I will say is this.
Bart, we have introductions so that these people, you asked who they were, now you have to tell them.
Oh, okay.
So, can we do introductions?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to St. James and Andrew to our Green Team Environmental Series talk for today. We're giving it a try at 12:15 p.m. to 1:30. Today's talk is about moving away from oil and gas, heat pumps for heating and cooling. And our guest speakers today are Bart Bales from Bart Bales.
From Bales Energy.
Bart Bales and Associates.
No, Bales Energy Associates.
Bales Energy Associates. And we have Peter Wingate of Community Action Pioneer Valley. Just a few housekeeping announcements to my left and right. We have 2 exit signs. If you go through the hallway, there are some restrooms, and we come back and we can listen to the presentation. So thank you for coming, and let's learn about these heat pumps. Thank you.
Sure. So anyway, I've got a quick introduction here. I jokingly get referred to as Captain Heat Pump because I do so much work with heat pumps these days. So I have been a consultant for more than 30 years totally on energy related things. I became an engineer to work on energy issues. And I look at a building as a whole system. Any part of the building I understand, energy-wise, structure, HVAC, lighting, controls, so on and so forth, domestic hot water. And that's called a whole systems approach. And my company is a statewide facility and energy advisor for the Commonwealth, so any public entity can hire us without procurement to advise on energy and, say, mechanical systems related items as well. So that's enough. Okay, this is all that we're going to talk about. Many things. So we got to roar through it quickly. This is just getting you used to the words of what things mean. A mini split is a kind of heat pump. There are multiple kinds of heat pumps, and a mini split, the thing with the box on the wall with the thing outside, that's one kind. There are other kinds too. And we're going to look at heat pumps that take the heat from the air, take the energy out of the outdoor air. And we're going to look at heat pumps that take energy out of the ground very quickly. So I just want to give you an idea of how these things work, because to me they seem kind of impossible. You know, what you've got here is you pay for 1 unit of energy, 1 unit of electricity. You get 2 more units from the environment, and your system delivers 3 units. So how in the world can you do this? This system does some magic in here that lets you suck some energy out of air that's colder than your house. How many of you have a heat pump now in your house? How many of you have a refrigerator? How many of you have a heat pump in your house? The job of a refrigerator is to take the energy, thermal energy, out of your food and heat your kitchen. The heat that's in the food ends up in your kitchen. So that's all a heat pump is. It's moving energy from colder to hotter, or cooling in the reverse direction. So how does it work? Helium and massium transferium. This is what Harry Potter says, and that's how it works. Workiums. So what I'm going to do here is tell you about 3 ways that energy gets transferred real quick. I'm not going to do much on this at all. So you've got conduction, which is energy going from between 2 things directly in the material. You've got convection, which is energy coming from a fluid next to a surface. And you've got radiation, which is like what the sun does. So I want you all to stand up and pair off with somebody. Okay, and if there's, okay, now I want you to shake hands with the person and not let go.
All right.
Don't let go. Okay, you don't have to wiggle your hand, just hand it. Okay, you feel the thermal, either your hand's getting warmer or colder. That's conduction. That's conduction heat transfer. Surface to, through the material. Now, if you're brave, pick up hold up your hand and blow on the back of the other person's hand. If you're not brave, blow on your own hand. Okay. If that's getting cool or hot, that's convective heat transfer. Air moving things off. Now, let go of each other. Step back and smile at each other. That's radiation. That's radiation. So it made you warm from the other person, but it didn't heat up the air in between you. It was direct transfer between them. Those are what those are. And I always start out this way. 1, because it's technically important, but 2, I've already set the bar very low. Nothing's too silly to say or ask. So feel free to ask questions. This is going to be interactive. Okay. I'm sorry, Peter, I should have done it with you. Okay, so the one thing to know is there's all those ways of transferring heat, but there's also ways of that energy gets in and out of your house, and that's by air blowing through your house. You know, like it leaks around the doors. It's intentionally brought in, and that's called mass flow. Now, here's the question, and I want everybody to raise their hand. Does heat rise?
No.
Don't, nothing more than just a yes or no. Okay, and how many people say it doesn't? And the rest of you didn't say anything, so heat doesn't exist.
Pretty chilly.
Okay, so what's going on here is that hot air is what rises, and that's mass moving. Heat doesn't rise. If you did that, then you'd say, oh, I've got a balcony with a floor. Don't heat it because the heat will stay up and cold will stay down. Well, that isn't true. Heat goes from hotter to colder. And you got to remember that. That's why we need to seal air leaks in our houses to stop the air from going through. And then we have to insulate our houses to keep the energy from going through the walls by conduction, the same way as it was touching your hands together. Okay. How does this work? As I said, it's really magic, but what it is they do some things with pressures and all that makes the refrigerant colder than the outside out here. Then you use a compressor, a pump, to compress it. That makes it warmer, and that makes it be able to lose heat to the inside of your house. And then we drop the pressure with this little valve. And so the point is, it's not violating the laws of thermodynamics. The heat is not going from from colder to hotter. It's going from colder to colder. Then they do something with the mass, compress it. That makes it hot enough that it transfers heat into your house. So that's the magic of the heat pump. And I just want to expose you to it. This could be talked about a very long time, and I don't think you want me to. So heat pumps move thermal energy from the outside to the inside of your house, right? So how many of you can believe that you can get heat out of cold air?
What?
Well, the rest of you shouldn't get a heat pump because you are getting thermal energy out of cold air. That's how this works. And that's why 2/3 of the energy we get is free. It's environmental solar energy from the atmosphere. And the third amount is the amount you put into the heat pump in the form of electricity. And that gets you 3 times as much out as you pay for. So that's the magic of a heat pump. There's all these, so we're using energy from the environment mostly with some electricity. And that's why heat pumps are better for climate, because we use 1/3 as much energy to do things, and we get the same effect. We get just as warm because we get 3 times as much energy. So the efficiency of a heat pump, if somebody says, I've got a 100% efficient heat pump, that's a terrible heat pump. That's electric resistance. These things are 200 to 400% efficient. It's really not efficient, but it's how much more energy you get out than you pay for. Okay, can you believe that? Just believe me. It's. So
He's done the math.
yeah, I've arranged and helped people. I help people get this done. I go into people's houses and walk around and see what kind of heat pump would make sense. And then the important thing I do is to size the system properly, because too big of a system is an inefficient system. So where's the heat pump in this picture? Here's where you have to talk. Where's the heat pump?
Outside.
What if I said you're partly right? The heat pump is this plus this. You have part of the heat pump is inside and part of the heat pump is outside. And all that stuff I was showing you in the diagrams happens, the heat transfer happens out here from the air outdoors, then the fluid comes in and the heat comes into the house. Okay, where do you hope this system is? What part of the country? You hope it's not in New England because it's going to be buried in snow. So these should be on 18-inch racks in our area. Get them up out of the snow. And these things are not like the heat pump that I grew up with. I grew up in a house with a heat pump. But I grew up in Tennessee. And what it did was it would heat down to maybe 35, 40 degrees, and then it would switch to electric resistance. And I was in TVA land where electricity was cheap, so people weren't as worried about it. The new, what happened? Did I move it? Why is it off the screen? The new heat pumps can deliver significant energy even at minus 13. Unlike the ones I grew up with, which had to top out at 35 degrees, because they'd frost up. And the heat pumps can maintain their rating down to either 5 degrees or minus 5 degrees, depending on which one you got. Our design temperature here is minus 2. So it means we can cover 99% of the time with the unit running at full capacity. And if either the unit is a little oversized or you have some auxiliary, you can cover things even in the coldest weather. And your system will still work in very cold weather. So the reason this works is there's new refrigerants, there's new fancy controls and compressors that make this work. So technology has changed dramatically and allows this to happen. Here are a bunch of the name brands that are good to think about. If you're going to look at a ducted system, this EcoAir system is really a cool one. It's got nice controls. It works with your ducted furnace, ducted systems. You can put one right on top of your existing furnace, just the coil on top, and have it interact with your furnace. Mitsubishi has something like that too. EcoAir only does things for hot air, for furnace-like applications. So then there are ones that do air to water. And you say, oh, can I put it into my boiler-based system? They don't make hot enough water yet. Technology's coming, but right now you can't just plug in an air-to-water heat pump and place your boiler. But there are some tricks to do to still make it work. Okay, here's one of the things you wanted to know about money. The average cost of the system might be around $20,000. If you've got a ducted system and you just put a coil and a unit outside, it might be as low as $12,000 to $14,000. Which means if you do your system and you get this rebate, it's almost all paid for in the ducted application. Okay, and otherwise you might end up with a net cost of say $12,000, and there's a wonderful program. Yes?
Just average cost 22.4. What BTU size system would you say they're dealing with?
A residential house.
What?
Just a general residential.
Which is like how many BTU would be the average for the average cost?
It's only slightly variable with size, but it's between 36,000 BTUs, which is 3 tons, to 5 to 60,000.
Okay.
In this range,
Yep.
it might be 22 to 40 for certain systems. I mean, I did a very complex system that cost a lot more than that. But most systems are not going to be complex like the one I'm talking about. There's lots of money floating around to help you. There's $10,000 rebate if you do your whole house and you are willing to disconnect your fossil fuel. You don't have to take it out. You don't have to take it out, you just have to disconnect the wires, or turn it off, or valve it off, that kind of stuff, yes.
You also have to pledge not to use it.
The pledge is not it's not a pledge anymore, it's a different thing. They've changed the rules slightly because they do say you can have backup capacity for extreme weather now. They say you have to size for 90% of your peak load. So that means you can have a backup system. So that's a nice change.
Yes.
But they're a little bit schizoid about the way they think about it. 'Cause they say that and then they say, well, you should really have the thing gone. But you can't do both. You can't have it be gone. And but anyway, technically what you should do is you're not going to use your system. You're planning to use it for almost all the time, except for emergency backup or extreme weather. The idea is you really want to be using this thing to get the environmental benefit. So that's what you should plan on. But that's the kind of thing I help people make decisions about. If you're getting an air to water, a ground source where you get the energy out of the ground, it's a whole lot more. It's like $20,000 more or more. But the incentive is a little bit bigger. You can get $15,000. And there is a federal tax incentive that helps with this. It'll be the cost after you've already gotten all your other incentives and benefits. And then there is a zero interest heat loan in Massachusetts that you can get the remainder of the cost that isn't covered by the rebate financed through a zero interest loan of up to 7-year term. So that means that you can afford to do this because it stretches your payments out a long way, and you're not paying any interest. The state is paying the interest on your loan. That's how that works.
Hey, Bart, is there an advantage to have a ground source as opposed to air source?
Yeah, there's a few advantages to ground source. I'm going to show some stuff about it in a minute. But ground source, one nice thing is you don't have any problems with having snow on your collecting location because snow is right on top of your ground. And when you're down far enough that it's pretty much out of sync with the weather up above, so it's almost a constant temperature in the ground that you're drawing on. So the efficiency is higher for a ground source, and it doesn't it doesn't lose capacity as it gets colder much because the ground stays the same temperature. But the capacity of an air source system without the magic of speeding up the compressor would drop as it gets colder. But they've done things to make that not be so much of a problem. Any quick questions?
Bart,
Yes, sir.
in terms of with the ground source, with the air-to-air, the unit modulates, right, in terms of how hard it's working.
They both modulate.
What does that modulate the amount of water being pumped out of the ground, circulated? What varies with the ground source units?
Yes, though there's just a certain amount of variability in the ground source loop flow rate, and then you change the flow rate of the inside of the inside is how you get the differential temperatures. That's getting a little technical. I better not go there.
Sorry.
I'll be happy to talk about it separately.
Yeah.
Is this what what does an air source heat, what does a heat pump look like? Does it look like this? Is that what it looks like? You seen those mini splits? There's the unit that's inside, there's the unit that's outside, there's the unit that's inside. See? And you can have, look at this, you can have 2 inside units hooked up to 1 outside unit, or 3, or 4. Or you can have 1 to 1. So this will get you lots of units around your house. Bang, 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 bang. This will get you fewer units. And we're going to talk about the trade-offs of using one and the other. But it also looks like this. It looks like a thing that almost sits on the floor. It's hooked to the wall near the floor, so you don't notice it on the wall. You've got ducted things that blow out sideways, things that blow out that are stuck up in your ceiling and blow 4 ways, just like you've seen more in commercial applications. So those exist too. All these are available in pretty much all the product lines. And there's also one that's not shown here, which is a big air handler, which is a blower unit. And that's like what you would replace your furnace with, your hot air furnace with a blower unit. And then the heat pump outside unit would still be outside, similar. What you want in this climate is ones that are labeled hyperheat or something like that. They're meant to give you a peak capacity for down to very low temperatures. So that's the kind you want to get. And that's the kind people should sell you here. So just one funny little thing. Look, this is what the air handler looks like. Pretty much like your furnace looks. Why is this picture here? Believe it or not, this is a blower unit itself. And it is fitted with a cover that you can put a print of a painting or something on it to make it not look so unattractive in your house. It's sort of funny though, when it runs. When it's not running, it's flat against the wall. When it is running, it tips out like this, sucks air in the tart, sticks out its ears and blows air out like that. It's kind of funny looking. There it is. See here's the painting going in. You can see how it's bowed out right there. I don't know if you can see. Bowed out a little. Okay. Now, I was just talking about you could get multi-zone. What does multi-zone mean? Somebody tell me. Anybody know? It means you have a bunch of them hooked up to one unit. Okay, that means you have more than one zone per outside. And what's the trade-off of having that? Well, this is a big one. Do you want them all around your house, or do you want to have it you don't see it as much? So how many of you would like to have heat pumps showing on the front of your house facing the road? Some may not mind, You can, as long as you plant bushes far enough away from them, you can shield them a bit. But the other choice is to have one and hook a bunch of units to it. It turns out there are trade-offs in, there are trade-offs in how much the little ones, the single units turn down farther than big units turn down. And so it means the units cycle on and off more if you get the big unit, hooking a bunch of things together. So the way it comes out is this. The single units, the one-to-ones, they're more efficient. And you have some redundancy. You have, if one unit breaks, you've still got some units that'll heat your house. Okay? And there's the sizes go down closer to what you need when it's not as cold. The advantage for the aesthetics for most people is you have to have fewer units in your yard. So it's for you to decide, is it aesthetics, is it energy, is it how many places do tubes come out of your house, and maintenance. You're going to have to pay for less maintenance on one unit than you are for 5. So that's higher. That's higher than the ones. And then cost, the multis usually will be a 5 to 10% cheaper. Okay? Or technically, the single will be 5 to 10% more. Those are slightly different percentages. So here's the ducted system. And at the time this was bought, they didn't have the sideways kinds of units in this model and in this size. So we had to go with this unit. It's better to have the units blowing this way. Why? Snow and rain. You'd rather it not drop down in as much. This is not a standard piece of equipment. This is something that they use in Canada that helps to divert the air a little bit and keep the snow out. So, where is the heat pump indoor unit here? Anybody got any idea?
In the air duct.
What?
In the air duct?
Yeah, but where?
Oh.
Is it here, 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 here? Any idea? I'll just tell you, this is a furnace.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is the only thing that you see on the inside of your house is this box on top of the furnace. That's where the coil is for the heat pump. There's no more units anywhere in the house. With a ducted system, this is applied on my house, which is an old Victorian, and I didn't want to see a lot of units around my house. So I put all in floor registers and blowing air into the rooms that way. And it's working out well. So this is a choice. If you have an older house, it's worth considering the ducted system, though it's going to cost you a lot more if you don't already have a ducted system. So this is that air handler I was talking about. That's for standalone. If you're going to not have a furnace. If you have a furnace, then it'll be about this big, and the furnace will be the fan for the unit. Okay. How am I doing time-wise? What time is it?
48, 12:48.
48, okay, 12 minutes, okay. All right, here's a real-life conversion that we did locally. And here, the existing conditions, nice country house. One of the spouses was very concerned. The other spouse wanted to put in heat pumps. And the former spouse 1, was concerned about how it was going to look. And so here's, I want to show you what it was like. This is how the house was before. You know, just your normal house, right? Now what is it going to look like in the dog? There's a dog. What's it going to look like after the heat pump system? What I will tell you is that the first pictures were the after pictures. You couldn't see anything anywhere, basically. So all it is all we added was these ducts and these registers in the floor for the whole downstairs. So spouse one was very pleased. And let's see. I'm trying to get to where something's different. Here's something we put through a closet to get a duct up to the second floor. Here it is in the closet. Oh, here we go. Now, where's the heat pump unit over here? Right here. This is one of those floor mounts. Very inconspicuous. And we didn't put it on the wall. They had things on the wall that they cared about having on the wall. Where is the thermostat for this new system? Call it out. Where is it? What shape is it? Guess. Don't worry. Just guess. What?
Round?
Okay. The round one is the old systems thing. This is what controls the unit, that TV remote, but the thermostat is actually inside the unit. The thermal sensor is. So, and the temperature that matters is the unit temperature in the unit. The temperature you set on there is saying what that temperature in the unit will see. So sometimes if you have a unit up high on the wall, it's seeing hotter temperatures, and so it's running longer than maybe you think. It's running less efficiently up there because it's taking in hot air. If you draw in air from lower in the room, it's a little more efficient. Okay. So there's that unit. And here's one in the bedroom. Oh, sorry. I've got this preview and I keep thinking you're seeing it. There's the other unit in that bedroom. Again, not very conspicuous, I think. So, and the dog was still happy. Here's what the basement looks like now. Lots of that. So that's where you see the impact of this. It's the ductwork in the basement. So if you really love a lovely basement, you know, you have to decide whether you think ductwork is beautiful or not. I think it's fine. Okay, let's get to something else. There's what it looks like on the outside. If you're going to putting it next to the house on the gable end of your house so the snow doesn't dump on it, that's ideal. If you have good long overhangs, you can put it on the other side and the snow will miss it. But and it's offset from the wall because it's got to pull air in the back and blow it out the front. Okay? And originally, that unit that's up is attached to the chimney was going to be over on the side, but they didn't want to see it out their window, so they put it on the chimney. So there it is. Fujitsu is a good model. Mitsubishi is a good model. There's a lot of people that do both of those in this area. There are a lot of people that do the eco-air ducted system in this area. This place also had solar panels already. To run this system, they would need to add a bunch more if they wanted to make their own power for it. And when you combine your solar or buying solar power with a heat pump, you've got a renewable energy heating system. That's why we're wanting to do it. So you can also do, here's the, I'm gonna skip my jokes. Here's your typical heat pump water heater that people are selling. You normally put these in a basement. What happens to the temperature of a basement when you put this in there? It gets colder because this thing is taking energy out of the air in the basement and transferring it to the water. So where does the heat for the basement come from? It comes from the floor above, transferring down. So it cools the area above a little bit, but it's usually only a few degrees impact. And so this can be a good way to get the domestic hot water done. If you don't have a basement, then you still could do one of these, but you may not want to run it you might want to run it only on electric in the winter because it's going to cool the area that it's near. I had this happen with the Habitat for Humanity house. I offered them free services to work on it. I said, be sure to talk to me before you complete the design. They called me 6 months later. They had completed the design. They stuck it in a closet between a bedroom and a bathroom, and then had a duct to the hallway to get air. And they said, we don't understand. I said, well, you're gonna have a problem. Your hallway, your bathroom, and that bedroom are gonna be cold. So a year later, they built it. I said, what you have to do is turn it on all electric for the winter if it's too cool. Comes back, talk to the person, how's the house? The house is great. He says, the only problem is the hallway's too cold. And I said, well, did you tell them to turn it on electric only in the winter? And they said, no. So you just need to know what you're doing. So
in terms of heat pumps heating the house, you have a heat pump hot water heater in, upstairs, not in the basement. You're going to just use more of your heat pumps heating the house, right?
Right.
Will that be sort of an even trade-off? I mean, is it as opposed to going to resistance?
No, you'll be better off.
With resistance?
No.
You'd be better off using the heat pumps to keep using that.
You'll be better off because you've got that you get the heat, you get 3 units of heat or 2 units of heat, or depending on how cold it is, you get more units or less units out of the outside air. But you're getting more than one, which is what electric resistance is. Right? Electric resistance is 100% efficient, but a heat pump is 200 to 400% equivalent efficient. So you're still better off. I'm going to dash through here. This is just showing you how these things work. Air goes through there, make hot air, room air goes in there, the cold air comes out, and energy is transferred by coil to the water. Now this is part of a small part of a 8-hour training, so I have to go through a little fast. Now you can use this. This is that example I was talking about right here, where they put the heater in here next to the bathroom and then connect to the hallway. Not a good idea. So we'll go through that. Now, you can also heat your house with water, an air to water heat pump. And all it is baseboard. Your baseboard that's sized that you already have is going to not be big enough because that assumes 180 degree temperature of water. And these units put out 130. So you wouldn't have enough capacity. You could increase, you can put panel radiators in your house, or you can put air handlers, or blower units, fan coil units, anything, and have the units go through. And you can use air to water to heat and cool your house. And this is what one of them looks like. This is the product I think about a lot, Spaceback. It's what people have around. They're doing air to water around here. There are a number of other companies. So you can hook it up to all sorts of things. You can hook it up to your domestic hot water tank. That's a cool thing about the air to water. You can make domestic hot water as well as heat your house. Yes?
So, would it be possible to use the radiators that are still there?
You can use them, but you're going to run out of capacity when it gets down to 40 degrees or so.
So, what should be substituted for those old radiators?
Panel radiators. You're talking about radiators or baseboard?
I'm talking about radiators that are, this tall and this wide.
That would have to be evaluated. You might be able to use those.
Okay.
And add some more things. Radiant floors, connect this up to radiant floors all day long. It's great, perfect. If you've already got a radiant floor driven by oil something or gas, you can switch these over readily. Okay, so too much. Okay, I said I would mention ground source. You can do it two ways. You can have a field that's horizontal and the tubes are only about 8 feet down in the ground, or you can put a loop that goes way down back. And just what you're doing is you're taking a tube of water with some glycol in it to make it not freeze if you get too cold. And it's a loop that goes down and comes back up. And all you're doing is running it down and bringing it back up and getting thermal energy from the ground. And the ground's like 45, 50 degrees. So you're starting from that, then you're using the heat pump to upgrade the temperature to what temperature you need in your house. And we call this ground source as opposed to geothermal these days, because geothermal is steam out of the ground kind of stuff. So it's confusing if you use the same terminology, but that's what people around here mean when they say geothermal is ground source.
Or when it's horizontal, how deep do you put the pipes?
8 feet.
8 feet?
And the horizontal ones are more impacted by the weather than these are. These don't notice the weather because below 30 feet, the ground temperature doesn't change with the weather. So.
And is that about 45 degrees?
It is when you start taking heat out of it. But you can depress your ground temperature by taking heat out of it. And so if you use one of these and you undersize your ground source loop, you can get your ground to get net cold year to year and get colder and colder and colder. So you don't want to undersize it. And there's some that take water out of the ground. There's a couple of ways that take water out. And there's a thing called standing column, which they take water out of the bottom of the well and they dump it back into the top of the well. And what happens there is they have to bleed off water periodically because the well gets too cold. Okay. So the best efficiency is open cycle if your water table is close to the ground level. The deeper you get, the more pumping work you have to lift the water up. And all you have to do is circulate with a closed loop. You don't have to lift the water, because the water going down pushes the water going up. But in this open thing, you have to pump the water out, so there's extra energy required the pump is doing. It's not the heat pump, it's the pump that is doing it. So, okay, that's what I was talking about, the standing column well, where they take water out of the bottom, they return it to here, and when this gets too cold, they periodically dump water somewhere. I'd rather see it this way. I'd rather see it pump, if they're going to use this kind, to put it back in the ground, not to the surface. This is the old pump and dump that was being done in the 80s, and it's sort of mining water. So we like closed loop. Most people do closed loop these days. So there's the closed loop. So you've got cold water going down and then getting warmer as it's in the ground, comes up. What would really be happening is this would get lighter and lighter blue until it starts to get to be pink, as the water gets warmer and warmer. Get what I'm saying? You're putting your water from your house down into here, and the water's getting warm just about now.
Is the blue water and the red is air, or what's showing there?
The blue is cold water, and the red is supposedly warm water.
Oh, thank you.
But what it would really be is, that's what I'm saying. Once you start going into here, this is slowly warming up. So I'm saying you get lighter and lighter blue and begin to turn to pink here and get hotter and hotter. Well, really, I'm just saying the coldest water will be up here at the top. The warmest water will be over here at the top. It comes back. The point is to get energy out of the ground. And you're also, when you're cooling, you're dumping energy into the ground. And here in this area, we use way more energy for heating than cooling. So that's why you need to make sure you make that big enough that the ground temperature can recoup in between summer and winter, so that it works. If you undersize this thing, you'll year to year you can essentially freeze the ground, make the ground colder and colder year to year.
But if it's properly sized, the ground temperature does recoup?
Yes. Yeah.
Completely?
Yes. This is simple enough. Simplest answer, if you design it right, it's going to work continuously. You're not going to have to worry about it. This is the Sunderland Library. This has grounds. It has, I forget, it's going to say on the next slide, it's something like 20 or 30 holes going down and back up, 15 feet apart or something. And that's how they're heating and cooling the library. This is the Oliver Center. Part of this is heating with ground source. Part of it is with pellet boiler. Do I have any time left? Go for it. Okay. So here, a caller calls from a 617 area code, calls me up, says, we have a problem. My wife is freezing in our house. It's been for 3 years, she's been freezing in our house. And it has heat pumps and solar electric and solar hot water, and it hasn't worked. And I said, well, how about a 10-hour consult just to begin to do it. I was really busy at this time. I was squeezing in 10 hours to work on this. So I said, well, can you tell me anything about this place? So I need to size it, so I need to know why it's different for different size. You need to know who your client is and what their needs are. You need to know where it is. You need to know if there's any backup fuels maybe. You need to know what the building's being used for. There's a whole lot of things you need to know. Well, do you have any pictures of the house? Well, here's the house. Well, that's an interesting looking house. Flat roofed house. Interesting. Don't see much of that around here. There is one in my neighborhood. But, actually two. Okay, here's the house again. Very interesting place. And it turns out that it's actually 3 houses there. And so just see what it looks like. There's a nice view there in the back if you're noticing. Where is it? Bodrum, Turkey. And so I said, well, you got to tell me something about how this works. Okay, I can do this for Bodrum, Turkey, sure. But it matters, the latitude matters, the weather, the temperatures. What's going to happen, I'll just give you a preview. This heat pump is going to rock. It is going to be so efficient in that environment because it doesn't see very cold temperatures. There's where it is. It's up on top. It's a villa up on top of this mountain overlooking the sea. And here's what they tell me they have. They have a system. They're taking water out of the ground, put it in the system, exchanging heat with it, and then running heat pumps and all this stuff. And then they've got solar up there, and there, a giant 2,000-liter tank. They've got a swimming pool. They've got radiant and all sorts of stuff. And before we got too long, they said, we're giving up on the ground source because it was not a closed loop. They were pulling water out. Well, they didn't have the water supply in the area. It was a dry enough place that they had to abandon it. So they said, do this to air to water. So that's what I did.
Or if we're going to leave time for questions.
That's good stopping point, Peter.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Wingate. I'm the Energy Director over at Community Action Pioneer Valley. And I'm going to tell you my history with mini splits and heat pumps. It started, I'm going to have to make up the date because I don't remember for sure, but I'm going to say it was 2012. And I was sitting in my office. I'm sure I was getting lots of work done. The phone rang, and it was somebody from the Department of Energy Resources. And they said, we have some grant money. Would you like to install mini splits for some of your households? I said, absolutely yes. We are your people. We will go install those mini splits and we will do a great job. Thank you very much. I hung up my phone. I went out into the middle of my office and said to my staff, does anybody know what a mini split is? Because I had no idea. Luckily, one of my staff actually had done, so he was able to reassure me these things are good, exist. And since that time, it's kind of taken over our lives and what we do in energy efficiency. If any of you have heard the word electrification, it's the whole process as we're trying as a state, as a country, hopefully as a world, to move away from heating with fossil fuels and using electricity more efficiently. So what does this all mean for us in this room? It was great that we went around the room and asked what people were hoping to get out of today. And one of the things I want to leave you with is don't worry about what your neighbor's done. Don't always listen to your brother-in-law. Your house is unique. When somebody comes in to talk to you about what heat pumps might be applicable, what might best work for your home, worry about your home and not somebody else's. It's really important to make it fit the house. I think Bart will agree. And if Bart doesn't agree with me, he will say it. And I am always encouraged because I always learn so much every time I talk to Bart. Through my organization, Community Action Pioneer Valley, for people who are income eligible, we can do all this work at no cost. It's pretty amazing. The figures Bart was showing you showed about $22,000 on average. I saw that today. That looked like from installs that were done a couple of years ago, so it might have crept up a little bit on that. I looked at our prices before coming over today, and I realized because of the housing stock we're working in, we have to do a lot of electrical upgrades first, things of that nature. So our average install is a little higher than that, but it's not comparing apples to oranges.
Not any fixing the house.
Right, yeah, my numbers just,
Yeah.
they didn't quite equal. But some of the things you might want to make sure when you have somebody in, make sure you do have electric capacity. Again, the houses we work in, almost the first thing we do, we go down in the basement and look at the breaker box to see if there's a 200 amp service or if it's only a 100 amp service. If it's a 100 amp service, usually we have to up it to a 200 amp service. That's also expensive. That might be $3,500. We're also looking at, I did look at this, about half the time we are adding in a heat pump hot water heater as part of the total install. So again, one of the things I want to be really encouraging that this is really a great thing for your home. But again, listen to more than one person. If somebody's telling you something that sounds too good to be true, maybe you want to get another opinion. I'm going to be a little hesitant to do this, but I'm going to do this anyway. There's a statewide push all across the state. I am not from Western Massachusetts, but I've now lived in Western Massachusetts longer than I've lived any place else. And I've recognized there's Western Massachusetts and there's Eastern Massachusetts. There are some entities that are based in Eastern Massachusetts that are coming out and doing a lot of work in Western Massachusetts. I'm not saying don't trust them, but be cautious. I think we have some really good local-based installers that I would turn to and just be cautious of any of the people who are not really based in Western Massachusetts. That wasn't going to be my point of what I talked about here today, but I do feel kind of passionately about this because I've just seen it so many times in Western Massachusetts. They come, they do things, they go away, and they don't answer the phone. I think I recognized that house in Berniston. It was so exciting to see the after because I'd only been there before. And it was done by a local contractor, and I'm sure it went really well. And I'm sure if there was anything wrong, they were right back there to address it right away. So Bart told you the rebates. Amazing. When I talk to people from other states what we're doing with heat pumps in Massachusetts, you can almost hear disbelief in the tone of voice. Like, how is that possible? And there, it's the good news and the bad news. A lot of this is getting driven by politicians. So politicians and energy efficiency, I'm not sure always are a great mix because they're pushing for a lot of things that may not be the best fit for your house. They want to come in, as a rule, there's exceptions to everything. They want us to come in and turn everything into a full displacement, get rid of everything that's a backup heat, and have you out on the edge there living with a heat pump. And I finally tried to figure out how to explain to them in Western Massachusetts, our weather conditions are slightly different than Newton. And that's exactly the example I gave. Our weather in Berniston is different than your house in Newton. And that finally seemed to resonate just a little bit. So we've had some ability to once in a while leave some backup heat. We're also finding that for the houses we're going into, about 40% of the time we're doing a partial displacement for one of two reasons. Here I'm going to use my house for example. My house is 200 years old. First floor is wide open. It's a beautiful application for heads on the wall to keep that big open space. My second floor is little room here, little room here, little room here. It's not a great application for heat pumps with the technology right where we are today. If we had a lot more time, I'd love to hear Bart's opinion about the units that I hear are always 2 years away. It's always 2 years away, 2 years away. The ones that look more like an air conditioner that fit into a window that are going to be designed to work on small rooms like I have in my house. And I hope they're coming soon because that's going to fit for a lot of people.
It's an exciting development.
Yeah. But as you're looking at your own house again, don't worry if your house isn't a perfect fit for full displacement today, maybe it makes sense to go ahead and get it started. look at the parts. Somebody mentioned they have a part of their home that just isn't comfortable. This is a great way to address this. It's a great way to have a partial displacement. Get used to it a little bit. We've also have some people who are saying, I just don't know, I don't want to commit to having my whole heating system removed. We can come in and put in the single head or a two head, and they can use it for a year, call us up and say, you know what, you were right. This technology really does work, and I'm now a believer.
Or piggyback on your ducted system.
I know a little bit because I've heard Bart talk about his system a little bit he has in his house. And it is what I would wish on everybody. And I do have, it was a former employee where they were eligible through our program, and they were on the fence. Couldn't decide whether they wanted to go with a full displacement or partial displacement. So again, you start with asking questions. First question, how do you heat your house? And they said with a furnace. And because, like for all of us in the industry, when you say a furnace, I'm going to go back and regress a little bit. 1987, brand new energy auditor. I met the head of the weatherization program for the state of Massachusetts. I was in a house with him. I looked at the boiler and called it a furnace. And I could just see the disappointment in his eyes. He and I did not get along for 3 years, and I'm convinced it's because I called a boiler a furnace. We found mutual respect. Actually, I think is probably more fundamental for orchestrating my career in energy than anybody else. But that one word, furnace versus boiler, turned him off so badly, it took me 3 years to win him back. But this person I was talking about, once they told me they had a ducted warm air system, I said, it's really the best way to go. Put in a whole ducted system. If your ducts are in good shape, when we talk about ducts, one thing I'm not sure Bart mentioned, if you have a ducted system, whoever does the work, make sure your ducts are sealed up really well.
And insulated.
And insulated. And don't let them insulate it first, because sealing up the duct is really critical. Ducts look like they're tight. Piece of sheet metal, it's really flat, and another piece of sheet metal is really flat, and there's some rivets or screws that hold it together really tightly. But if you run air through it, there's so much static pressure moving through those ducts that air leaks right out through there and it goes where you don't want it to go. And it's really simple. It is simple technology to seal that ductwork up and then insulate it. And then having a ducted system, you're going to live your life exactly the way you did before you had a heat pump. You're going to turn it on, the heat's going to come out in the same place, and you're going to be very happy. The other thing, yep.
Just one tiny thing. You do have to check the capacity of your ductwork, that whether it has enough airflow. If their size too small, then you won't be able to necessarily meet the load. So that's something that has to be evaluated technically. It usually works, and that's one of the examples where keeping a furnace in the back and saying, okay, when it gets colder than a certain temperature, we'll switch over to furnace. So it means you can still do it readily, but and it's very important to have them insulated if you're going to use the air conditioning capability, because air conditioning makes ducts cold, and then they condense water on them, and you can grow mold places you don't want it. So it's important to look at that.
Absolutely. Nope, had another point. I'm sorry, I lost it. I think I'm just going to say once more about everyone's house is unique, and make sure you get something that really does fit your home. We have found, we were worried. The state did put pressure on us to do this faster than I think the industry was ready, faster than I think we were ready. But the politics and the funding that was requiring us to do this had us out in the field doing work probably sooner than we should have. I had a lot of concerns. I was very happy to say I only remember 2 complaints really from last winter. Last winter was not a brutally cold winter. And the main complaint I had was a very nice gentleman out in one of the hill towns who said where the compressor went, where he knew it was going to go but didn't think about it. When he sits in his comfortable chair, his favorite place to sit in the house, he no longer has a view of where the squirrels like to play. So that was the biggest complaint we had. So again, our confidence in this stuff is getting better. Yesterday we had an hour and a half training with our funding source where they're going to change all the requirements about all the detail they're requiring us, our contractors, to submit. And actually, you couldn't see this wonderful look in your face. And that was my look on my face at first when they were telling us this. But then I thought about it more and I said, no, this is a good thing. They want to make sure that we're doing it right. So I'm going to beat up on the politicians just because it's an election year. It's a fun time to beat up on the politicians. They just want to see numbers. Every time I put in a heat pump, they get to claim some type of carbon savings, whether it's real or not. Whether it's done correctly or not, the politicians get to check mark and claim so many carbon savings. But for you, if it's your house, it really matters that it's done correctly. I'm going to just leave it right at that. So if you come through my program mainly means you're eligible by being, by signing up through fuel assistance, or if you're on the discount rate with either Eversource or National Grid, depending on where you live, you can have this work all done at no cost. And if you're not, if you're a little bit above that, there's these amazing rebates that are available. Then the tax credits that are on top of it. I'm certainly not going to try to talk about tax credits. And the loans program, the heat loan, which again can take any of the costs and spread it out over up to 7 years. We always do warn people, that was the point I wanted to make. It does feel like magic. But if you've done a full displacement and you're not used to it, when you get your January electric bill, it's going to be higher than you've ever had it before. So you have to remember to do the math. First of all, what was your January electric bill before you had the heat pump? If it was already $200 and now your electric bill is $600, that doesn't mean the heat pump costs you $600, it costs you $400. Oh, and if you paid $2,000 for oil last January, you need to factor that in too. So we really try to spend a lot of time preparing people how to get ready for those cold winter electric bills.
Just your numbers, it's 1/3 more efficient you talked about. How do you convert that into the difference in the fuel costs?
That's not the right number though.
What?
It's essentially 3 times, 2.7 times as efficient.
As efficient.
So it's
so if you compare BTUs to BTUs of oil, gas, electricity
right.
for a heat pump, what's the dollar
efficiency? The dollars. The last I checked it is down to 31 degrees. It costs you less than oil.
Oh.
Below 31 degrees, it starts costing you a little more, and every degree lower, it costs you more.
Wow.
That's roughly how it works out. At least I worked it out for one particular client with their particular system. It depends on how good the boiler is, what fuel it's on. This is oil I'm describing.
Yep.
That's another reason where if people feel constrained by operating costs and they need to make that be their decider, then a mixed system operationally you can have, and it's readily available, it's not anything special, a controller that, like on the EcoAir, it comes on the thing and you can set what temperature you want it to switch over to furnace.
Huh.
So, like I've got mine, at a low temperature because I'm trying to make offset as much of my fossil impact as I can. But that's a value judgment you can make yourself. It's just go down and change the number. You can say 15 degrees. And my system had enough capacity to get down to a certain temperature, and I couldn't get a big enough system for just a one unit system in my house. So, but typically you can get a big enough system, and now you can. There are bigger systems available. So, the one thing I wanted to say, qualify on what I said before, is my understanding is the rule is you've got to, for the $10,000 incentive, you've got to have a system that can meet 90% of the design load. So, and one of the things is, how do you know what 90% of the design load is if nobody ever calculates what the design load is? And you have to do that by doing a detailed analysis of the house. And I try to keep people getting a correctly sized unit by doing those calculations and getting the sizing correct, so you get the most efficient operation out of your unit, because an oversized unit is an inefficient unit. So, anyway.
So I need to go home with one conclusion, which I gather is I have to get rid of radiators and get a duct system. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
You can leave your existing system in place, and if you're putting in the
And get
units on
something that makes hot water go through the radiators. Heat pumps can make hot water.
No. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, sorry.
I'm saying if you're going to have if you're not going to take out your oil system, but leave it as a backup, you don't have to use the water system as your delivery system. You can put heat pumps on the walls or on the floor.
But the heat pumps are ducts.
Heat pumps are not ducts.
So they can be.
They're not just ducts. They're the things through the wall, the
Okay.
things on the wall. You can just go on the wall, unit outside, on the wall, unit outside.
Okay.
Or you can go on the wall to one unit outside.
Right.
So that's what, in your case, you may want to leave your infrastructure in place for backup. And the one thing I want to say that I didn't emphasize is, particularly in Western Mass, if you're in a rural area, if you're in a place that's likely to experience power failures, you will not be able to run a heat pump system on a generator, but you will be able to run the fan and firing mechanism of a boiler on a generator, should you have some sort of situation like that. So there are some advantages in more isolated areas to keep that backup capacity in case there's some reason that the unit isn't able to run due to electricity or breakdown.
So my final reminder is going to be, these heat pumps are great, but always make sure that your house is properly insulated and air sealed really well, because you want to keep that January electric bill as low as possible. So don't skip that step.
Well, it's easier than that. You can't get the money unless you have an audit first. So the first step is to have a free mass save audit done, and that will identify viable improvements to your house. And if you're income eligible, they will do that for you, and they'll do what is eligible in the program to fix up. If you're not income eligible, then you get 75% of acceptable measures are paid for by the program. So it's an incredible deal, and it's amazing that our state has taken on this so seriously. We are the leader in the country in all this, and have been for, I think it's 6 to 10 years.
That's lucky for us.
I said it was going to be my last thing, but I got to tell you one other thing. I was coming home from the beach last week, driving on 95 after we were at Crane Beach. It was a beautiful day, and because of what I do for a living now, all I can do is look at people's heat pump installs as I'm driving. And there was one that I almost drove right off the road because the outside compressor was sitting dead on the ground, tilting already on the outside of his house. So I could tell my wife knew I was doing this. I focused on the road, trying not to look at this, but there are some bad installs out there, so don't be somebody with a bad install.
Be somebody with a good install.
Be somebody with a good install.
Are we generally dependent on the installer for the engineering for these systems? I mean, in response to you, I was thinking, hire Bart to come look at your situation. Yeah. But in most cases, it's the installer that's kind of saying we should put this here and this here, and this is what the BTUs you should use, right?
I'm gonna jump in before Bart. Again, I'm kind of beating up in one of these things that are Eastern Massachusetts based because it's really got under my skin. I saw that they are advertising for heat pump auditors, qualifications, must have at least 5 years sales experience. So there's a lot of people out there that are salespeople who are not really technicians, so be careful.
Yeah, the reason I started doing what I'm doing now, which is a lot of these mini consults for homeowners. I worked in the commercial institutional sector for most of my career, and I had an architect friend who asked me, somebody wants to get a heat pump, can you help me? I don't know how to tell them. And so I went and started helping them, and I realized homeowners need just a little consult. They just need a little help. They don't need to hire a full-scale engineering report. You just need enough to get you over the hump. And so that's what I've been doing. And I'll just give you a cautionary tale. A friend of mine called me and said, can you help me with this thing? We've gotten 3 quotes for his house. And there were 3 quotes, and one was, just pretend like you care what BTUs per hour means. But one of them was, the guy said, 45,000 BTUs, that's what we're gonna give you. Another one said, we're gonna give you 58,000 BTUs. And the third one said, we're going to give you, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. There were 3 things that were 15 units apart, big difference. And they had different areas of the house that they were treating, and they had different areas, different numbers of units and all this kind of stuff. And the funny thing was, the one that did the most cost the least. It was the best buy, and it was the best system. And it covered the whole house. The others left out the basement, or left out the basement bedroom. And this basement was used. It had a workshop in it, and it had a bedroom in it. So you sort of need some, it's better to give the contractors a document saying, here's the size you have to meet, here's the load. And then they all quote on the same size system and say, we want this kind of system. We want a ducted thing. We want a bunch of single units. We want a multi-zone unit, We want it laid out like this. So, but there are some good contractors out there. And most of them will not do you a load calculation until after you've contracted with them, is the way it works. And so, but most of them don't do it. A few of them will do it, but most of them don't do a load calculation. They say they're doing a load calculation. They say your floor area is this much. For a 2,000 square foot house, you need X. Well, if that's a really well insulated house, the load's going to be one thing, and if it's a really poorly insulated, the same square footage is going to be a lot bigger. So you really need to get that done right. And there ought to be more people like me doing these calculations, but there aren't very many around. I think you all have somebody doing it for you now, don't you? Most of the contractors walk the property with what they always call a factory rep, but I don't think it's really a factory rep. But we do have to submit the math that we're using to demonstrate what size we say that the house needs. So then there is another set of eyes looking at that. Yeah. I didn't exactly answer your question, but... That's okay, it's an election year. So good luck to everybody. Yeah, and I have, if I can be of help to anybody, feel free to. Thank you. I've got cards and I can give them to you if you want to do it. This, for people who didn't get to come to this is going to be on Greenfield Community Access Television and available through YouTube, is my understanding.
Yeah, I think we probably, does anybody have any further questions? Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
One more thing, it certainly does not be on the camera. My father was a Lutheran minister, and today reminds me of the Thursday night services, because at Thursday night there was always a small crowd, but I assure you my dad took the sermon preparation just as seriously for those Thursday night sermons. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.